Felix started with really the goal to be the financial companion for Latinos in the US, but enabling the easiest way to send money back home. Folks would come out of the store with a receipt. They would snap a picture of the receipt and send it over WhatsApp. WhatsApp was part of the habit, right? So we started building from day zero, leveraging stablecoins on WhatsApp. With stablecoins, you essentially accomplish economies of scale, even as a small startup. Like, to win in this market, you have to be the best on WhatsApp. Period. We always knew that we weren't going to be just a remittance company, right? We wanted to be a financial companion. Send us a voice note, text us, and we'll be smart enough to understand your needs.
Views are personal, not investment advice.
This is Money Code. It's a show about stablecoins and agentic finance. I'm Chuk Okpalugo.
And I'm Parekh. And today we have Manuel Godoy, co-founder and CEO of Felix. Felix is, as some of you may know, one of the leading remittance payment platforms, moving billions of dollars to Latinos and immigrants all over LATAM. Manuel, thanks again for coming on. Maybe Manuel, just as we start this conversation, maybe if you can orient folks, the origin story of Felix, how it started, and what is it becoming today?
Of course, and thank you guys for the invitation. Excited to be here. Felix started with really the goal to be the financial companion for Latinos in the US, but enabling the easiest way to send money back home. And interestingly, when my co-founder and I met in business school, we didn't know we were going to be co-founders, but it was very easy for us to realize that we were compatible and we're extremely passionate to build something. And in those conversations, we started to realize that as immigrants, Latino immigrants in the US, I'm from Venezuela, he's from Mexico, we were close to the problem of accessing the best financial services possible here in the US. And particularly for me, I've been fortunate enough I went to school in California. I lived for a long time in Texas. So I've always been close to the Hispanic community to an extent in which, learning how and admiring how they come to this country to work hard to send money back home. So it was something sort of like back of my mind. But I always remember also one occasion, I was in Houston. I was 27 at the time. My mom calls me and she says, like, "Hey Manuel, I need to send money to your grandma for an emergency, but I can't find a way." And interestingly, in my mind I thought, my mom, probably your setting on your phone is gone bad, and I gotta go to your house and maybe put the phone back in Spanish. But it was something much more complicated than that. Some of the listeners here may know about some of the bad situation that's been going on in my home country, Venezuela, for the last 20 or so years. And so really sending money to Venezuela has been problematic, and we had to hack our way into doing that. We had to send a Zelle to somebody here in the US. That person would take the cash out and drive the cash to my grandma, who used to live in a rural town back in Venezuela. At the time, I thought it was something very specific to Venezuela, but it was obvious that was a problem that was growing. Then going back to where we were in business school, thinking about ideas. Funny enough, we're sitting at a class and a professor shows a graph illustrating how remittances have been growing exponential rates for the last 50 years. And a professor, and the punchline of the graph was that remittances to LATAM at the time, $90 billion. 80% of those were still originated in cash in stores. Right? So imagine that people would commute to a store, stand in line, paying the fees. And I connected it to my personal story. And to me, it's like, I understand why it's painful to send to Venezuela. Why is it painful to send money anywhere? Like, why painful in my mind is you going and walking to a store or sitting in a car for 20 minutes to park the car, to then stand in a line to pay outrageous fees. So that to me didn't make sense. So that inspired us to go and talk to users. We were in Philadelphia at the time, and we would go to South Philly, which is a location with high density of Hispanics. We would stand outside Western Unions, playing our student card so that they would talk to us. and the pandemic was ongoing, by the way. So obviously it was not a great time to be talking to people. And but we started to learn a lot from remittance senders. And after a lot of conversations, we realized two main things. One, folks deeply trust the store, right? It's a choice that they make in going to the store because they know that the money is going to get there. It's the same store that they've been using for years, or if not decades. And that gives them peace of mind. And peace of mind is important. Trust is super important. And these are folks, again, they have, probably all of the folks that we talked to, they had a smartphone, they had a bank account, they have all the tools to send the money digitally. They just decided not to. But the second thing we realized, the second aspect of the behavior was that folks would come out of the store with a receipt. They would snap a picture of the receipt and send it over WhatsApp to their family member in Mexico or Central America. Because on that receipt, you have the unique ID number that the person there needs to collect the cash. So WhatsApp was part of the habit, right? So by then, we had already tried and failed with many different ideas of solving the problem. At this time, we said, why not emulate the experience on WhatsApp, right? That human experience, but enabling the convenience of digital payment. And that's when we finally started to see some actual product market fit. And we knew back then, by the way, that stablecoin, or crypto in general, really back then, had to play a part, because it was obvious to us that was the best way to reduce the cost. Then we started actually doing it with or measuring it with data versus other providers in the traditional world. In TradFi, it was clear stablecoin was clearly more valuable. So we started building from day zero, leveraging stablecoins on WhatsApp.
That was an interesting detail that you mentioned there. So, you had it in your mind, you knew the problem, you were determined to tackle it. And it sounds like you tried a few things first before actually getting in front of users, talking to them, and finding out that this trust thing was really critical. And then the WhatsApp part was also in the flow. What were the other things that you tried?
Yes, no, great question. And funny enough, when we saw that first problem that I told you, we were thinking that we're the smartest people in the world. We're like, okay, we know how to solve this, right? And we started being very book nerds and trying to understand how do people use the money. And so we started realizing that people would actually use it mostly for buying groceries, or for your normal daily or weekly shopping, groceries, utility bills, right? So we said or medicine actually as well. So we said, why don't we enable users to pay for those things directly from the US? And we would eliminate the fee, and we would monetize with the business partners, right? With the retail stores back in Mexico. We were clear that we wanted to start in Mexico first, right? Because biggest market, we can go to a smaller community and go deep there. And we're like, wow, we're so brilliant. This is a beautiful business model, right? And so we went out to folks, and we would put it's like a demo type of thing. It was really it was a Wix page, by the way, back then, that had a few buttons that would allow people to buy. And they were like, oh, this is cool, amazing, but I don't care. Like people would say the first thing, it's like, this is amazing, but really they wouldn't really care. And there's this whole thing around, there's a book called The Mom Test, where is it how do you ask the right questions to users? Because users are nice to you. You gotta really understand the behavior. You gotta really go deep in doing research. So very quickly we realized this is not going anywhere, and learned and started learning that users really wanted to send money, and this was more anecdotal. But then we put a button in that flow. We said, okay, you can pay for services, you can buy groceries, you can pay for medical bills, or you can send money. And people would be like, wow, amazing, all these options, and they would click send money, right? So they actually want to send money. And by then, actually, it's interesting, I was talking to a friend from the MBA, and I introduced me to this concept of the dead weight of gifting. Are you guys familiar with that concept? So when you give a gift to somebody, let's say you give a gift to your significant other, you give them a book. That book is worth $20, let's say. It's a nice gift, but for them, the value of that may not be $20. Like if you give them $20, they're gonna actually maximize what they want to get, right? Maybe they go to the movie theater, right? Maybe they buy coffee, whatever. Maybe $20 is a cheap gift for your significant other in December, in Christmas. But I think you get my point. So the point being that the user really trusts the beneficiary to maximize the use of the money. That's what we started realizing, that they want to send $300, and they really trust that their son or their mom or their brother or their friend are going to maximize the use of those funds. They can go to the grocery store, they can pay the water bill, and if they want to have a beer over that, that's fine, right? That's okay. So then we pivoted to like, okay, let's focus on just sending money. And again, we built this cool kind of like app type of experience. And people were saying, okay, but very tropicalized. We're saying like, we're gonna be very hyper focused on this user. We're making it Spanish. We're like, okay, we now nailed it, right? And again, like people would be like, oh yeah, cool, but like, whatever. We wouldn't see like that's so like product market fit, if you will. So that's when again we realized that the story that I told you after talking to a lot of folks. Actually, it's interesting because I learned this guy. I learned something about a person that would. He had moved to Philly 10 years prior. But then a couple of years before that, before I talked to him, he had moved to Jersey. So he had been going to the same store for 2 years from Jersey to Philly, 1 hour commute to go send money from the same store. So it's crazy, right? Because of the trust that he has on the store. Like no app is going to make him change that behavior. So, but when we actually started building this on WhatsApp, by then we already have a lot of users. Or not a lot of users, a lot of folks that we had met that we could be potentially users. And we would go again to South Philly. People by that time they were already tired of us talking to them, and I started telling them, hey, write to these bots. It's gonna help you through the transaction. And there was still this kind of like trust barrier, right? And I had this person, Leticia, who was our customer number one, who I had met. I known her for years. She works for my brother in California. And my brother was super nice to her. She helped her bring their children to the U.S. She knew my family. There was some trust, and I was like, hey, Leticia, why don't you try this product that we're building on WhatsApp, and you can send money. And again, she knows me, and she's like, no, I'm okay. Like I don't want to do that. It's like, I mean, wow, but like just test it. And she's like, okay, fine. So that tells you a lot about the trust barrier, right? And but it's interesting because I saw her going through the flow of WhatsApp, sending money, and then she got the receipt. And once she confirmed that the money was actually deposited on the other side, her mind was blown. For her, it's like, how the heck? Like the only way to send money is going through a Western Union. Like how can this be? It's magic, right? And then I saw her telling her husband, her sister-in-law, her husband's name is Ramon, sister-in-law's Guadalupe's husband, Gregorio. They're all customers of Felix today. So she went from hesitant to a trusting user to an ambassador. And that's been the reality for Felix all this time, that people get marveled by the experience on WhatsApp, how easy it is, how fast it is, and then they become ambassadors of the product.
That's an awesome story. And like I think the cool part about the entire story is that you're talking so specifically about the user, the problem, the pain point. Uh, like, I think sometimes in the fintech stablecoin world, we get so caught up in like, what's the layer below that? Can you talk about the plumbing and all that sort of stuff? But what you described is like, hey, that's actually not the point. You can always figure out the solution and reverse engineer to like liquidity and like, whatever, like settlement times, all that sort of stuff. But a lot of what you're talking about is like real empathy for the user, which I think a really important point to like take away from that entire story. And I guess like from Leticia, Ramon, like using Felix Pago at the time, like how did it change and evolve like the the story of like what the app and product became after? Like how did you guys take it from like that small cohort of users to say we need to scale trust to a lot of folks because they happen to know you and there's still like this friction and trust. But then now you have to scale it to like many, tens and hundreds of thousands of users. Like, how did you scale that even further from there?
Yes, 100%. And by the way, on the point that you made, I cannot agree more. It's all about the user. And Steve Jobs says it in a elegant way. Naturally, he's Steve Jobs. He says you gotta focus on the solution and then walk backwards on the technology, right? So then you know what to solve, and then you figure out how to solve it, right? And I before Felix, I was I learned the hard way, right? I failed many times because I would fall in love so much with the product, with the technology, with like just writing code without really talking to users. So it's very, very important. And getting the trust of users have been an evolution, and it's still a thing for Felix, right? It's the thing. Today, we're lucky to say that 70%, roughly 2/3, 70% of our users come in some organic form or word of mouth. So that's either actually true organic on WhatsApp or via referrals or organically through Google, right? Or to our website. And when we survey those users, they say, "Yeah, a friend told me about it." But it takes you gotta reach critical mass, right? So that word of mouth kicks in. So at the beginning, it was really painful. It was really, really hard because it was my co-founder and I were the best salespeople in the world for this. We would convince folks in the streets of Philly. We then went to other places in Pennsylvania. Then we went to Jersey, New York. We went to the Bronx. We traveled to LA, talking to users all the time. We then said, like, okay, this is working. Let's build a brand ambassador team, right? Folks that would go out and convince users. Extremely hard to do, extremely hard to scale, because you gotta hire people to sell the product. There's nobody better than founders to sell a product, right? So it's really, really, really hard to do. And kudos to those that have actually, nailed that one. So we would still be like, okay, let's test paid advertising, right? Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. TikTok we didn't test back then, but Facebook and Instagram mostly. We knew that our users were on Facebook. And it was still really, really hard, right? Because they get bombarded by so many remittance providers, right? Why would they trust a new one? And it took a lot of iteration. We would still kind of like try out referrals in the beginning, but again, without critical mass, it was really, really hard. What happened was in December 22, after a lot of like experiments on paid media and whatnot, that were kind of getting us customers, we were like maybe overspending on free fees or better effects. On December 23rd, 2022, we tested with an influencer on TikTok. It was the ugliest video you could imagine, right? So it was this guy that had like dollars like behind him, like this animation, dollars falling behind him, like kind of random, but this guy, he had hundreds of thousands of followers back then. Now he has like more than 2 million. He's a newsman, right? He would provide news to folks, so he was trustworthy. He's a serious person, right? In TikTok, and he posted on December 23rd. Felix went crazy. December 23rd, December 24th, December 25th, so Christmas. It was the whole company, which back then was like 14 people, chatting. We hadn't had everything automated back then. We had to kind of actually chat with people, especially when they were asking questions, right? We were like, like everybody, 24/7 connected, chatting with people. And again, LLMs weren't there back then, right? So back then it was our natural language processing algorithms trying to automate as much as possible. So that one was really the catalyst for Felix, but it tells you something about trust, because trust was the driver, right? Folks, influencers, what they have that is powerful is that they have a follower base that trusts them. And influencer marketing was really our first sort of like catalyst for growth. And again, in parallel, we'll continue saying like, okay, you referred your friend, right? And these folks will refer friends organically as well, right? So we started having this word of mouth effect. So that drove a wave of users. That's still the case for us today. Like we still leverage influencers. Then we started leveraging partnerships. Partnerships, again, they drive trust. Partnerships on the other side, where we partner with Mercado Libre, and kudos to them because we're very scrappy startup, still 2023, very early, and they placed a bet on us on doing a partnership in which they would allow their users in Mexico to request a remittance via Felix on WhatsApp, right? So it was extremely easy to do. So that was also another catalyst of growth, and then we started signing other partnerships like Nubank. Now we have in Mexico we have Stories, Spin. In other places we have Yape in Peru, Banco Guayaquil in Ecuador. The main fintechs or banks in Latin America are partnering with us. And then again, like I said, like a lot of word of mouth effect, referrals. We started maturing referrals, understanding how to do referrals right, optimizing that funnel, which has been a lot of I wouldn't say it was like a one unlock. It's been a constant experimentation process to unlock referrals, but it's been incredibly important for Felix as well.
That's awesome, and it's really important to continue to develop all the different channels, and they kind of rely on each other, and so it's a bit of experimentation and then going back and then unlocking them and then doubling down again on the ones that are working. But just to give us some context, as you've talked across all the different years, how has the kind of the volume of the users and payment volume evolved? I think I saw something recently to say that you've reached lifetime 5 billion of volume, but that's a couple of months ago. So maybe you've got some more updated numbers to share.
Yeah, we're now north of 6 billion, approaching 7 billion very soon. We might be even north of 7 billion by now, but yeah, we're growing really, really fast. We've been 3xing the company year over year, every month for the last few months. So even at the scale in which we are, which is now for Mexico alone, we have around 7% of the market share, right? And we have a strong market share in other corridors. And US to Mexico is the largest corridor in the world. So even at the scale in which we are, we continue growing at a tremendous speed.
And which are the other corridors that you're currently in?
Yeah, so as of now, we have Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Peru. Working extremely hard to enable Venezuela, especially because of the sad news recently about the earthquake. We're doing a tremendous effort there. The team has been working day and night to not only enable a donor flow, but also a Venezuela flow. Naturally, a lot of regulatory constraints, but working really hard to open Venezuela, and Brazil is also another sought-after corridor that we want to open.
I think, two of the themes that I'm hearing a lot from you is like one in the beginning, like scaling trust, and then personal responsibility is like some of the principles that that I'm hearing from Felix, and we can kind of there's a lot of like I said before, you can go deep into the weeds in the tech, but at the end of the day, like what you embody as a company, as a team, is trust and responsibility. And I guess maybe like two questions for you, like I've grown up last many years just like learning about Felix Pago as a brand. And now I'm starting to see, Felix, and you're talking about this expansion in products. Like maybe we can like dive deeper into that. And then maybe the other question I have for you is one thing that I've seen just interacting with other folks on your team is that they all kind of share that same personal responsibility also. Maybe just describe like we've talked about scaling users, but maybe if you can describe like scaling team and then how that relates to like scaling from Felix Pago to now Felix as a new entity and a new business and new platform.
Yes. No, exciting. I appreciate the question. It's interesting because the name Felix came from in those early days. We actually didn't have a name until like for the longest time. But we knew we had to be like we like it sounded you're talking to somebody, like it's a person, right? So the great thing about Felix is that you can say Felix, you can say Felix. It sounds well in Spanish. It sounds okay in English. It's very multilingual, multicultural. It sounds like happiness, like felicidad in Spanish, and it has a very nice touch to it. Curiously enough, when I went to buy the domain, felix.com wasn't available, so I had to buy felixpago.com, right? So Felix Pago started to really take off, and we're like, wait, Felix Pago makes sense. I mean, if our user are saying Felix Pago, let's just call it Felix Pago. But we always knew that we weren't going to be just a remittance company, right? We wanted to be a financial companion. So now it's great because now it's a time for us to be much more strategic. It's like, okay, we have Felix Pago, it's remittances and payments, or not just remittance, but payments. But Felix can actually be that trusted financial companion. And so we're now strategically, putting Felix more as a primary sort of company name, and to start kind of like building sub entities below Felix for the products that we're launching. And to your second question, it's interesting because I started to realize that, and I learned this from a coach, what the job of CEO is as a company scales. And it's really three things. At least that's where my mind is today. It could change, but that's what I realized, at least so far, is that responsibility number one is, money has to be in the account. Right? You have to pay. You have to allow for to bring the best talent possible and pay them appropriately. And that means also fundraising, but also making sure that there's a business model that makes sense. Right. Two is hiring the best talent possible. Right. So my co-founder and I have always been very close to recruiting. Even now, we are north of 400 people. We are very, very close, and I've interviewed probably half of that. At some point, we were blockers of the recruiting process because they couldn't find time on our calendars. So we started splitting between my co-founder and I. But we're very close to the process. So hiring talent. And then three is maintaining culture. So maintaining culture at scale, it starts to become really almost like a full-time job. And it's you start obviously to doing things that work artifacts like company values. We have the Felix way of work, how we work together. The people that we bring has to have certain characteristics, but it starts to become like, okay, it's not only what we say, we have to embody it every single interaction that we have with the company. If we're making a change, a cultural change, we added one value not too long ago, which was we have to aim for insanely great. So far we've been always like a scrappy startup where we get stuff done, and it's very live, but sometimes we move too fast, and it's like the Facebook thing where move fast and break things. At some point you cannot break things because at scale you cannot break things, and I think Facebook was famously known for adjusting that value where move fast, just don't break everything. So aiming for insanely great means like what you're launching is great from different perspectives. It's scalable, it's reliable. But just putting a new value out there, it means nothing. You have to actually repeat it and leave it and making sure you reward for it. So I think I would say that the combination of job 2 and job 3 for CEO allows the culture to scale. Recruiting the people that are going to be culture ambassadors, that are passionate about what we want to accomplish. And you start realizing that people that are passionate are going to figure out on the way, no matter their skill set, they're going to learn, they're going to just find solutions. And then making sure that the culture is live. It's a day-to-day job. It's in the nuances. It's how you talk to employees, how you handle meetings, how you reward people, how you praise people. It's fun, but it's a nice challenge.
Yeah, and it's a challenge that I'm sure has changed throughout the evolution of the company. And as you grow and you scale from single product to multi-product across multiple jurisdictions, then those things compound. And so it's an ever-evolving journey, I'm sure. Thinking about the technical side of things, and I guess specifically, this facilitation layer that we call stablecoins or blockchain or stablecoin infrastructure. From your journey from the beginning of being scrappy and trying to make it work, and then making it work in Mexico, and then making it work across other corridors. What lessons have you learned about where stablecoins are actually helpful, or where blockchain technology is actually helpful? What did it actually unlock versus not? How has that compared versus across the different corridors?
Yeah, great point here. And let's go back to the origin story, in which, again, we started learning that our users needed something that was extremely easy, trustworthy to use on WhatsApp. But we haven't mentioned price. So obviously price is important. And when you don't have economies of scale, obviously as a scrappy startup, it's a money losing proposition that you want to compete with Western Union. So how do you figure that one out? And it was almost obvious to us that crypto had to play a part. And from my perspective, as a Venezuelan, when you grow up in Venezuela, when the country's currency gets destroyed by central control, you appreciate what crypto does and what Bitcoin has done for humanity, really. But we're like, okay, let's really kind of understand this. So I actually built a script that would scrape all the data for crypto trading here in the US and crypto trading back in Mexico. We're thinking, okay, what if we allow our users to buy Bitcoin, and then we send the Bitcoin and then convert it to fiat. So it would be like a Bitcoin sandwich, right? We started thinking into this, but we also in parallel started realizing these people, they don't really care about crypto. They care that their family gets taken care for. So it's like we have to figure out a way that they don't see that, and so or they don't see the crypto. So we started realizing that Bitcoin wasn't feasible because we would bring volatility to the flow. And either we show that volatility in pricing for the user, or we would eat that volatility, which would be kind of complex. So we're like, okay, stablecoins make sense. So let's look at stablecoins. And then, back then there was the myriad of algorithmic stablecoins, which, were gray, maybe one way to describe them back then. So it was clear to us that we had to work with a stablecoin that was that just give us that just had green flags, if you will, like we could trust it. So it was clear that to us that USDC could be a great candidate, because it's auditable, it's backed by US treasuries, all the positive things about USDC that we know. So we started actually looking at USDC data. Okay, what if we on-ramp in the US, or what if we off-ramp in Mexico with Bitso at the time? And we started realizing, okay, USDC was make sense. And interestingly, we started doing the stablecoin sandwich. Back then, that concept didn't exist. I actually first heard that term maybe last year, where our head of fintech partnerships back then, he was like, they mentioned this. They said that we do stablecoin sandwich. And like, oh yeah, I guess that's a nice way to call it. But we were doing that for years. And we started to see in the data that we could actually have a very good cost, because essentially what happens is with stablecoins, you essentially accomplish economies of scale, even as a small startup, because you're literally trading USDC into or off ramping into fiat in an open market, right? In the books at the time, there was the books of Bitso, and I think we all have a libertarian mind here, where you're offering that stablecoin in open books. You're gonna find the best cost, and that cost is gonna be close to the market. So the cost for us was close to interbank rate. Naturally, when you're small, you still have the trading fees that you have to pay to the exchanges. That's fine, but even with those fees, it was still much cheaper than going to FX providers that have a myriad of intermediaries that have to deal with SWIFT, they have to deal with working capital, and they have to deal with the intermediaries that take commissions along the way. And then if you go directly to the books of crypto, then you sell directly. So the cost was obviously better and allowed us to accomplish economies of scale as a small startup. And that's also what led us to go and talk to Circle first. So Circle was really our first partner, which I'm always going to be appreciative of, being great partners so far. But that allowed us to mint in the US, and then we went to Bitso, allowed us to off-ramp. And then now we're replicating that model all throughout Latin America. Like the challenge is that you have countries like Mexico where you have a mature crypto market, but then you have countries like Nicaragua that is more tricky. Like there's no OTC, there's no exchanges. So in some countries in Central America, we go directly with some OTC. Some countries we have to go the traditional route, which is more expensive and cumbersome. But again, what matters to the user is that the money gets there. I always say that it could be a donkey going through the border, right? It doesn't matter. What they care is that the money gets there fast. They naturally care about price. So it's our job at Felix to build the best infrastructure to reduce those costs and pass those savings back to the user.
So what happens in those markets where there isn't this deep trading infrastructure? Do you have to build it out yourself? Does it end up being cheaper than if they went through Western Union? And how does that work out when all of that infrastructure isn't already there?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I'm not gonna lie, but again, going back to we're user first. So we give the best price to the user that we can give, and we work when there's no liquidity or providers. We work with traditional providers, and that's more expensive. So in those corridors, the margins are worst, or worse than let's say Mexico, where we have a very, very mature crypto rail. So that's what happens really, but we go obsessively. We have a tremendous business development team that their sole job is to optimize rails, and that means going and find those local liquidity providers to optimize that. Yeah, it's a real challenge. We solve by using traditional rails, offering remittances to users. Those corridors have a bad margin, and then we go and optimize.
And does it mean that in the future, as you provide a service to the user that ends up being like a good price for them, even though it may not be good margins for you, with enough volume, you can either negotiate better or attract more kind of crypto-centric like liquidity to say, hey guys, like we have volume in country X, we need more kind of crypto native liquidity. And then that hopefully helps everybody. Or does that not really, is that too much of an investment? Because once you have scale, then actually the traditional financial firms work just fine.
You're 100% right. Economies of scale are very important. It gives companies power to grow their business and deter competitors, if you will. Not only the volume in those countries, by the way, but the fact that we have volume in Mexico helps us with new corridors too, because we're moving a lot of money, and they know the potential amount of money that we can move to new corridors. So yeah, that allows us to negotiate better deals, but also to we discussed with folks that are maybe operating in Mexico. We're like, okay, let's do quetzales in Guatemala, right? Or let's do lempiras in Honduras, and a lot of them are doing that. So it's a thing that is definitely happening. But there's regulatory challenges. They have to go through those hoops. We have to go through those hoops too. So we try to go together. In fintech, as you may imagine, everything is about partnerships, right? So even when you say that we have to build that somebody has to build them on their own, that's not true, right? You have to rely on fintech partners, on payment processors, on off-ramping providers, liquidity providers, FX providers, again, in the traditional world, retailers for cash payouts. You have to rely on a myriad of partners. And that's what we try to do when we optimize or we want to find liquidity in those corridors.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, as we're coming close to the end here, I mean, one area that I'm actually curious about is like the WhatsApp form factor, because WhatsApp historically has not invested into their APIs, and it wasn't really, they started the semblance of a developer platform, but it wasn't like the cash cow for the business, as you know. I'm curious, just like the journey and maybe the roller coaster of like working with Meta and the WhatsApp platform, because I think only in the last year or so have they really started to like improve those APIs. But you were probably an early mover of like their API business in general.
100%. That you're exactly right. At the beginning, it was really, really challenging to say the least. Because yeah, we were. I'm gonna venture and say that we're probably the only ones in the U.S. really using WhatsApp as a product, not as a notification like OTP notification type of product, which I think Brex did that a while ago, where you get the OTP on WhatsApp, but really as a product platform. And we would tell this to Meta obsessively for the longest time. And interestingly, back then, Meta already they had the Novi Wallet project going on with part of the Libra project, where their vision in their website back then was to actually have a flow in stablecoin on WhatsApp. So that was kind of scary back then, but we were charging on with our idea, and then that got dismantled for different reasons. But it was clear. Actually, Zuckerberg made an announcement last year, big announcement, how he intended to make WhatsApp more of a platform. That the results of that we're seeing now. Like you're saying last year, I would say that even more like this week. As we're talking, they're launching, which you may have seen, they're launching the username feature. That's going to be very powerful for businesses because it's going to allow folks to find businesses like you would find them on Instagram or Facebook via usernames. The API platform has been improving tremendously for sure as well. And so I would say that now it's much more clear that they want to make WhatsApp a platform. It's gonna. I mean, I don't see their P&L, but if you ask me, it's gonna allow them to monetize WhatsApp much better, because then businesses can build an experience on WhatsApp that is much more human. I mean, you can see they've shown us these metrics that the folks see more open rates versus email, more retention on WhatsApp versus other channels. So all the good things that actually make sense to have on WhatsApp, and they're going to monetize on that via the API calls, right? And so yes, it's being a strategic shift from Meta from maybe a year or 2 years ago from now. We were the early adopters of that. We were until somebody proved me wrong, I would say we were the first in the US on leveraging WhatsApp as a platform as a product platform, and we'll continue doubling down on that. Our users, like, to win in this market, you have to be the best on WhatsApp. Period. Even if you have an app, even if you have other things, like, you have to be the best on WhatsApp. So, but even beyond that, there's a meta point, pun intended maybe, that our users appreciate that we're conversational, right? And again, we're ahead of the game there, because our users, what we're finding out is our users are early adopters of conversational, right? They're going from the store through conversational. They're skipping apps, and we are becoming again the best of that. And there's a point where we say that we're financial companion, because companionship means that you can talk to us, right? We'll be here with you. Send us a voice note, text us, and we'll be smart enough to understand your needs. And we're very excited about that.
Yeah. The idea of a financial companion, there's just so much potential for it, from helping you do remittance to purchases, payments, sending money, savings, investment, planning, beyond, right? Risk management, insurance, and so on. So I think, when I think about where AI takes us, not even just for LATAM, but globally as well, there is this kind of long awaited for ideal product of like the personal financial companion, a personal assistant, personal professional who can guide you along with your decisions, many of which are financial in our life. And we just don't really you don't get trained about personal finance in school or university, to be honest. Everyone kind of figures it out through their friends, their colleagues, and various different websites. So I think it's a very big opportunity, and AI is right there. And if you already have people's trust, you're in like a prime position to become that companion. So very excited to see how you guys are building on WhatsApp. And I think, honestly, it's a big opportunity for other folks. The WhatsApp as a surface is untapped. It really is untapped. So looking forward to seeing what people build there. Manuel, this has been great. Thank you for coming on the show. Where can people go to find out more about you and Felix?
Yes, I mean, definitely I invite people, if you have to send money to your loved ones in Latin America, use Felix. You can go to felixpago.com. Hopefully, on WhatsApp, it's enabled, our username is enabled, so maybe you can find us there on Felix on WhatsApp. And you can actually download an app. You can search Felix on the App Store, where, interesting enough, the app will take you to WhatsApp. So yeah, you can find us there. And you can find us on Twitter, Felix Pago as well. You can find me there, Manuel Godoy M. So thank you, Chuk and Raj. It's been a pleasant conversation. I appreciate the curiosity on our business. Hopefully it's useful to your listeners.
Awesome. And Raj, where can folks go to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on X at Parekh and then Manuel Godoy.
And for me on X, it's Chuk_XYZ and LinkedIn, Chuk Okpalugo. Manuel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to Money Code. There was so much to take away from today's conversation. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too.
If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, share it with someone you know, or give us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Until next time.